All right, I got Brittany Anderson on the show today. She's a certified transformational coach and the founder of Vernala Coaching. Brittany, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
I'm
Thanks for having me.
excited to dive in with you today because you are an expert in many things, but one of the things you specialize is family dynamics, and bringing leadership and cohesiveness into the home, which I'm super passionate about, and you're doing an amazing job. So this is going to be a lot of fun. But
Yeah.
how did you know you talk to all these experts around the world like yourself, and usually you don't just one day think, I think I'll give transformational coaching a try and see if that sticks. Usually there's a pain to purpose story. Was that the same for you, and that you realized there was a huge gap in maybe your family life or your relationship that needed healing, and that led you to doing what you're doing now?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the best kind of work to do, is the work that's rooted in your own story, right? And so, yeah, you can probably identify this as a former first responder. I'm a military spouse. Uh, my husband and I have been married. Well, I'm not a military spouse anymore. He just retired a few months ago, but we've been married for 16 years. But our 11th anniversary was almost our last. And there's a reason that the divorce rate in the military is nearly double that of the general population. And that is because military marriages are hard. We endure so much uncertainty, multiple moves, multiple deployments, so much, your life is unpredictable. You can measure life or plan life and with very little predictability. And also for me personally, we I had to mold and bend and transform so many different times, having gone through all of these different moves, that in 2019 I had lost who I was. I kind of created all of these different identities for myself and just didn't know who I was anymore. And I felt like the only way to rediscover and refine myself was apart from my husband. Um, and so at the time, I was working at a global nonprofit called World Vision, doing World Vision is doing amazing work in 100 low resource countries around the world. And I went out for this training in Seattle, and it was the first. I had been working for World Vision for a couple of years at that point, but at this training, it was the first time I heard this idea about poverty being rooted in broken relationships, and in broken relationships with God, with ourselves, with each other. And it was the first time, my husband and I had been going through, we were, really going through challenging times at that point, proceeding with divorce, again, mostly driven by me. And here I was thinking, I'm trying to do all of this beautiful work to help millions of families around the world, and yet my relationships are broken in my
Mm.
own family. And that was really a turning point for us. I remember having a conversation with my husband that evening, while I was out in Seattle. We were talking on the phone and just starting to kind of think about what glimmer of hope was there. We'd been seeing marriage therapists, but a lot of the signs that we were going through, the stonewalling, contempt, we were feeling all of those things that kind of say your marriage is off track, it's lost hope, and yet it wasn't. Was a glimmer of hope, and we've come a long way. 5 years later, both of us have done a ton of transformational work together. We've begun working with our kids through transformational work, and that's really informed the work that we are doing today through Renala. So, yeah, it's very exciting. And my thought and viewpoint is that if we can do this with all of the challenges that we've faced, anybody can. And that's the joy and the gift that this work is to really not only do it when you're desperate and need the help, but being proactive, and creating a vision, creating an identity for your family,
That is
before things fall apart.
Yeah, that is so good. And you and I have a very similar story, which I love. And, it's
Mhm.
funny, having been a former police officer, just like the military, divorce rate, infidelity, I mean, the highest in all the professions, or very close. I don't know who's higher, but they're up there. Let's just say that.
Mhm.
And when I transferred to the San Francisco Police Academy, I remember the last week or the last day, they had our spouses come in and say, "Hey, these guys are going to be hitting the streets." And now I had already been a cop for 6 years in Oakland, so this was
Yeah.
nothing new for me. But anyways, they did a nice little, seance with the couples, and they had them bring in and say, "Hey, these are the things we're gonna, you can expect." And they gave everybody a book by Dr. Gil Martin, and this book talks about the hyper vigilance and the psychology that happens for law enforcement officers, and really what can you expect. And it's this beautiful book that you can hand to your wife or your spouse and say, "Hey, here you go. Just so you know, this is going to be why I'm going to be effed up. And this is why I'm going to be a complete mess. Our marriage is going to suck in the next 5, 10 years. Don't know, maybe even sooner. And this is why." And it's this beautiful manual. It gives some solutions. It's not, the end all be all. But I'm sure you would agree. It's like, great. I have this manual that tells me my life is going to suck. And I got a couple tactical things I can do, but not much. And
Mhm.
it's really a harsh reality. I don't even think anybody took it that serious back then.
Mhm.
And I'm sure same for you. So yeah, first responder life, very, very difficult. I wanted to ask you though, you mentioned you had this, you had a couple things happen after that World Vision training. And number one, I heard you say you went into yourself. You had to go into yourself and dive deep. It almost sounded like you took a break from your husband. Did that happen? Did you guys kind of take like a mini separation?
Yeah, it was a separation. I mean, we were separated a lot as it was anyway. So, not to make light of it, but he was an Air Force One pilot. He just retired as a presidential pilot. He was gone a lot, and it was a crazy life. And even leading up to that, and previous assignments he had, we weren't together very often. So. But even when he was home, we were separated. He was down in the basement. I was upstairs. Um,
But that was done in there's
mhm,
I want to be very clear, because there's like my wife and I would do the same thing. We were in the same
mhm.
house, but I wouldn't have said we were roommates, but I would have never said, there was never an official like, you go live downstairs, I'm going to live upstairs. We are like officially separated but living was that in your case, was
Oh
that
yeah,
like, that, okay,
absolutely.
that was stated.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
here's my question. So you guys were separated. Do you find that, because I know some couples, I've heard stories like yours where they separated and it was a very intentional separation of
Mhm.
learning and growth and a time to come back into who they were so then they could come back together. But because that intention bubble was set, it worked out. Now we
Mhm.
know there's other times where people say, "I need to separate to get more space." They don't even know what that means. And you hear this
Right.
all the time. And guess what? They always get divorced. And so I always tell couples,
Mhm.
do not do that. You are basically taking a step towards divorce.
Mhm.
My question to you is, but it all worked out, and
It did.
it sounds like you did an intentional separation. Was that what happened? And if so, can you kind of walk us through that?
It's interesting you bring that up because for us, I was the person that I needed space. And so that's what's really so miraculous about how we came back together because once we were separated, it was a spoken decision, mostly driven by me. But the tipping point was again that going out to that training with my nonprofit. But I had also been working with a few different therapists at that point, and I can't say that any of that work was really productive for me because it was holding me in a victim state, and that is why I felt like I needed space. I could not come together with him and have that intentional separation because I felt like the victim to the circumstances, and so it was just blinding me to uh, any possibility that was open for us.
Yeah,
And
and
it
to your
wasn't
point, that's
until
again why I always tell people,
mhm,
do not separate, because typically what
yeah,
happens is women, and I'm just using you as an example, if you're the woman who is saying I want to
mhm,
separate, we see it all the time, again
yeah,
and again. I need to find myself. But the problem that
mhm,
I see is you don't even know there's no intentionality, because so you finding yourself is just a vague term. And I know what you mean. I do. I know what you want and
Mhm.
need. But a lot of times people don't go into action with that clarity. And so they're just in their head, like you said, reliving the loop of I'm a victim,
Mhm.
I'm a victim. He's to
Yeah.
blame. Screw him. And you never see the healing that way, which is why I typically don't recommend it. But
Mhm.
again, I have seen where if people are intentional, and they're like, in the next 3 months, I'm going to work hard on myself and I'm going to come back together with you and we're going to be an amazing couple. I have seen things like that work. So
Yeah, yeah, and I have seen things like that work. That said, I think there is tremendous power in doing the work together. So, and that's why Renala exists, is because I believe in doing this work together. Because your family is a mirror for you. You can't do this work on your own. And so, and it's oftentimes like I said, when I started working with a coach in late 2019, that's when really things started to turn around for us. It wasn't that I was doing that work in isolation. He knew I was doing it, and we were having conversations about it. And then he was coming alongside of me, and we were talking about this work together. And that was really kind of that inciting incident for us in transforming. And so, I think even in hiring a coach, though, which I think everyone should do, especially a great transformational or what is your title? uh,
I don't even know if I use that title. Human potential coach.
Human potential coach. Perfect.
Yeah.
Very similar idea. But your coach, it's like looking in a mirror. If you're looking in a mirror and doing it by yourself, you only see one dimension. A coach is going to see other dimensions of you, but they're not with you all of the time. You get an hour, you're in a group program, maybe a few hours a week. Your family is with you all of the time, and they are the best mirror for helping you discover who you are. And then you helping them discover who they are. You're mirrors for each other. And that's why I think doing this work in isolation, yes, it can work in certain circumstances, but it's going to be so much more powerful, so much more accelerated when you're doing it in relationship.
100%. I love what you said. You also, I want to go back to, you mentioned that in that process for you, there was a glimmer of hope. And I
Mm-hmm.
find that so amazing because so much around you was chaos. And matter of fact, there was like 99% of you was like made up in your mind. Like, we're getting a divorce, we're separated, we've been separated, but yet there was a glimmer of hope. And I always say, where there is no faith, there is no cure.
Mm-hmm.
You had that glimmer of hope. And I see so many people lose that one little percentage of hope. And that's all that it takes. That's all that it takes, is that one glimmer of hope. But what do you say to people? Because then there's so many people out there that are living in toxic relationships and no one will change. Having come on the other side of, you've been on both sides where I didn't think there was hope. I found this sliver of hope and my life turned out amazing and we're in the best place possible. When you're helping people navigate those murky waters of, hey, Brittany, I think I should get a divorce. How do you kind of help them navigate, like, it's a sticky situation, but how do you help them navigate, like, whether they should maybe stick in a relationship longer and continue to have hope,
Mm-hmm.
or hey, it's time to move on?
Yeah, I mean, I believe that we change the world and we change our relationships by first changing ourselves. And so, if you have not done the transformational work yourself as a first step toward healing a relationship, then that's the first place to start. And this work is never done. I mean, we never fully arrive and become fully transformed. But there's so much work that I think we can do, and especially in understanding who we are. And that's really the work that Renala does, is to kind of help hold that mirror up, help couples, families come together to better understand each other, so that they're all holding the mirrors. We look at identity and who you are apart from a role that you play. You are more than mom. You're more than dad. You're more than a job title or a role that you play in your community. So, what is that? Do you know, if you had to tease, if all of those roles fell away, who would be left? So, really having clients look at that, the identity that they have, the unique identity. We also look at strengths. I'm a Clifton Strengths coach, and the strengths look at what is my genius? What is uniquely, how am I uniquely brilliant? The likelihood that you share your top 5 Clifton Strengths themes in the same order as someone else is 1 in 33 million. And so I always say that combined with your story makes you truly one of a kind. So, what is that genius? How can we pull that genius out of you? And that's part of that transformational journey as you're continuing to embody that genius. What does the genius reveal about what you need, what your unique needs are, and how are you advocating for yourself to meet those needs? And then also we look at values and play personalities. There's 9 play personalities. Um, what does play look like for you, and what is fun? What gets you into that flow state? Because all of these things together, when we more deeply understand ourselves and allow ourselves to be seen, to be known by our spouse, our partner, our kids, our closest relationships, so much can be unlocked in just doing that work on ourselves. And then again, doing that work in relationship with others and help and understanding and seeing others in our sphere of life too. So
That's massive. Yeah, no,
mm-hmm.
that's massive. So do the work first.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're both doing the work, then I think you can actually make I'll say logical, quote unquote, logical decision that, hey, we've actually done all the work, and there's still no hope, if you will. So I love
Mm-hmm.
that, and I think that's actually a really good binary tool. It's like, did we do the work yet? No, we haven't. So let's give it a try. I always think too, there's a reason that we're here. Like you said, they are shining a mirror on you. And the more that I've looked at my own life, I'm like, oh my God, like these are my best life coaches right here, my wife and my kids. And if I actually listened and stopped blocking them and pushing them away, I could probably get my own transformation if I actually tuned in and listened. But usually my ego and a lot of things get in the way, and we don't do that. So that's so good. Yeah, do the work first, and then come back and tell me if it's over.
Yeah. I mean, it's so much of the stories we tell ourselves, right? And that's what you were just alluding to. I was telling myself a lot of stories about my husband, Jeff, when we were going through our near divorce in 2019. And they blocked me from seeing a human being who just wanted to be loved. And so when we begin to see the other person as really someone who wants to be loved, the good, the bad, the ugly, all of that is really just a journey and a quest for love. We begin to start to unpack and unravel some of those stories that may or may not be true. And when we do that work to more deeply understand them, and oftentimes we're bringing our own family stories into relationships too. So that's why I think this family work is so powerful, because at Renala, one of our kind of guiding ideas is, what if your family tree became less about the past and more about the future? So kind of bringing that future or that past story, and what are the things that I learned growing up? And are they serving me? Are they fueling the stories that are unproductive or unhealthy in my marriage, in my partnership, in my parenting, in my work relationships? And how can I unpack those, disrupt them, and start writing a new story for my kids? And so that's where this work is really powerful in making that family future story possible.
So good. You've mentioned a lot already about Renala, which I want to get into some of those tactical things that you just talked about. I want to backtrack really quick, because I know something that you say often is world-changing leadership begins at home. Can you share a pivotal moment when that philosophy like actually transformed your family dynamic?
Yeah, well, I'd love to share a little bit about my husband's journey, because when we went through this transformation after near divorce, the military talks a lot about leadership, and they do a lot of training and a lot of courses and all the things to train up leaders, but they often sideline the family. And we're brought in when it's convenient, and it's not often convenient. And I think that that's a missed opportunity, because again, your family's a mirror for you. If you cannot lead yourself or your family well, you can't lead well in any other sphere of life. It has to start at home. And it's not only starting with your family currently, but unpacking those stories that you're bringing from your own home and your upbringing as well. And so As my husband and I really started to, do this transformational work, he was showing up in, a very, it's a military culture where, it's not easy to be vulnerable and share what you're going through or what you need. And he was showing up at work and starting to say, my wife wants a divorce, and saying, I need to kind of take a step back, or I need to do this. And more people were starting to kind of show up and share their stories as well. And it became this more vulnerable culture because of, Jeff having the willingness to show up and be vulnerable and share what he was going through. And also, as he was, changing, there was an obvious shift in his leadership. He retired in February. His retirement ceremony was just this beautiful celebration of him and us. And just the words that were said of him by, the lowest of enlisted, the lowest rank, up to the highest. And just he was just the most selfless, thoughtful, intentional leader that they had ever worked with. And I think that was kind of that journey for him, and us doing this work at home and him showing up at work more vulnerable. Part of our family vision is disrupting the status quo, and disrupting the status quo in the military was part of that. And he really showed up and did that powerfully to close out his career over the last 5 years. And we're super proud of the impact that he left on others. And I think, again, it really all stemmed from the family work that we began 5 years ago.
So you mean to tell me you can't be a powerful leader who leads men in the military or the police department or wherever you work? You can be a chief, a sergeant, a captain, whatever, and then come back to your family and treat them like crap and go on and live an unconscious life? You mean to tell me like there might be some tie-in to how that affects your work and how you lead and show up at your work as well?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would think so. I think I'm with you. I think, yeah, if you can't lead your family, how do you expect to go lead men into battle? Not saying you couldn't. I just think you could be a lot better.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We're leaving so much impact on the table. And oftentimes, if you are being a jerk or whatever at home, and I'm speaking about women as much as I am about men here. So when I say jerk, I think that has a manly connotation to it. But, if you're not leading well at home or leading yourself well, because I'm assuming some of your listeners don't have families. So thinking, in the context of just even leading yourself, you're probably not, you might actually be a jerk at work. Too, or you may just be leaving tremendous impact on the table. You have no idea what more is possible by first addressing the family aspect at home.
Yeah, 100%. You mentioned vision a lot already. Vision, values, your family's identity. How was it defining all of these? How was for you defining your family's identity, your vision, your values? How did that help you navigate through some of those challenging times, and any advice that you would give to us or others that are trying to do the same?
Yeah, again, it's really that be, do, have model. So I think a lot of us were raised in families where it was the reverse of those two things. So we were do, have, be, which was you are what you do. There's high expectations that we had to meet, or we were raised in the have, do, be, which you are what you have or what you lack. And oftentimes we're bringing those stories into our own families as well. And so we're looking at Renala, we look at be, do, have. And so defining our identity, both individually and as a family, again, the identity, strengths, needs, values, and play. And then develop using that not only to, more deeply understand each other, but to create a family identity. I spent the last 20 years as first as a journalist, and then worked at some nonprofits, and then was a facilitation practice lead at a large consulting firm. So I was doing a lot of brand identity, marketing identity, marketing strategy, communication strategy for some of the most well-known government agencies in the world. And so this is similar. I mean, I think it's kind of strange to think, oh, my family is a brand, but what is it's not thinking of a brand as like your logo or your color palette. It's thinking about who are we and how are we showing up in the world for others, or in front of others. You know, we're out to dinner, and you know, our daughter is 13. She has a cell phone now, so it's like it's a challenge, but it's, you
You're
know,
like,
we
hey,
don't have
over
cell
here.
phones at the dinner table. Yes.
Yeah.
We don't do cell phones at the dinner table because we want to see other people look at us and see a family who's talking to each other. Um, and so it's things like that. It is, how are we portraying ourselves to the world, and then who are we for each other? And that's that deeper understanding of one another, that identity, strengths, needs, values, and play, and grounding in that vision of how we're showing up in the world.
Yeah, I
So
love
that,
that.
yeah.
And having a
Mhm.
family brand is not you updating your Instagram profile, the Joel Evan family profile. That's not what we're talking about.
Mhm.
Um, no, that's really really good. I love I love that, and I think too, when you don't have that brand, then when times do get tough, you don't know what you stand for. So it's easy
Mhm.
to have a cute little brand when things are going well. But what about when times get hard? That's usually when the world will just take you where it wants to take you, unless you're very clear on who you are,
Mhm.
what your vision is, what your values are, that brand that you said, all those elements that make up that. So that's so good that you help families do that. That's important work. I love that.
Yeah, 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 yeah. It makes the challenging times, I hate to say easier because they're always hard, but it makes them your ability to find joy and find resilience in them so much easier. That's what's easier. It's not that the challenge is easier, it's the way that you're showing up in the challenge is just easier. You can find yourself laughing and finding joy, and a consistent joy, that without that foundation, it makes those challenges that much harder.
Yeah. Another thing you've mentioned a lot is the strengths, understanding
Mhm.
your family's strengths. We all know their weaknesses. That's every day, right? And I've had a very brief look at this training through some of the coaching that I've done, and I thought my understanding of it is very low. I want to just say that. So I understand a little bit about it. I don't use it tremendously, and
Mhm.
I don't even know if I find knowing there's. I understand like some of the philosophy behind it, but I don't use it that much. And I know you're a big proponent of it. So tell me why I should maybe reconsider. Yeah, this is an important aspect. You should understand your family's strengths, Joel, and this would actually make them even better. For me personally, I'm like, so what? I know their strengths. Like, what does that mean? What do I care? Why do you think it's like such an integral part of that family work?
Yeah, I think oftentimes if you have taken the assessment, you've probably done it in a corporate or office setting. You haven't done it on your own necessarily, but oftentimes, and I led a lot of strengths workshops when I was a corporate facilitator, um, and it took intentional effort to get teams to continue to deepen in that work. Uh, and too often, it does gather dust, and we don't take it seriously when it really does have a lot of power to unlock the relationships that we long for. And so, yeah, for us, just me understanding there's 4 strengths domains, and so that's probably the easiest way to talk about it, because there are 34 strengths, and they get to a very granular level, which is what I love about it. It's not like Myers-Briggs where you're one type of, I don't even know how many types there are of Myers-Briggs, but or you're one Enneagram number with maybe a wing, or in different. I do like the Enneagram as well, but strengths is so granular because it is that you're 1 in 33 million, that you are truly unique when you combine that with your story. And so we think about the 34 strengths fall into one of 4 domains. There's strategic, executing, relationship building and influencing. So the first two, strategic and executing, fall into the strategic domain. The relationship building and influencing fall into uh, the relationship building domain. So my husband is he's very much a relational person. We're kind of backwards in terms of gender roles, I think. He's more of the relationship person, and I'm more of the strategic person. And so, we can, butt heads sometimes because my number one strength is futuristic. And so I'm constantly living in vision future all the time. And he just wants to have a conversation, and be heard. And so that's been, that's kind of a simple way to describe it. I mean, we've gotten a lot more deeper into the weeds, into some of our strengths. Both of us, interestingly, share a lot of strengths in the executing domain, and which is also a beautiful thing because we know how to get stuff done. And that's been an asset as a military family. In fact, we just moved to Florida, and the movers were like, "This is the most organized move we have ever seen in our lives." And so that's, that plays into both of our strengths because we're very organized, where we get things done. And so, but it's been an asset for our kids and our parenting, especially. And there's an assessment for specifically for kids. It's called Strengths Explorer. There's, instead of 34 strengths, there's 10, and it gives kids a top 3. And so that assessment's for kids who are ages 10 to 14. Once they're 15, they can take the regular adult assessment. But that's been really helpful for our kids because it helps us to see, okay, these are not mirror images of us. They're not mini versions of us. They are different, and they have unique needs that we may not understand. And so it's helped fuel conversations. It's also helped us it's given us a language to speak to them that is non-judgmental. So it's a way to say, this is who you are, so why are you not showing up this way? And so, to give a quick example, my daughter plays travel softball, and one of her top strengths is competitor. And it's interesting because when she goes to school, that strength is embodied very powerfully. She loves being the best. She loves learning. She loves homework, all the things. She loves to compete and stand out. But there was some challenges on the softball field in the spring, in the way she was showing up. She was you could tell she was kind of hesitant, withholding, and not, showing that aggression and showing up powerfully as she could. And so we were using that, this is who you are. You're a competitor. It's showing up over here at school. Why isn't it showing up here? And those conversations, she was very receptive to them, and really just influenced the way she started showing up more passionately, more aggressively on the softball field. So it's really, these assessments are really a powerful resource for helping you understand yourself and your genius, as well as, understanding your spouse or partner and understanding your kids, and really giving you a language to speak to them and challenge them to step into what they're capable of, step into their genius without kind of sounding judgmental.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, that's clear to me. I can see that, and I like that because even though you're in a way you're labeling them like you're a competitor, I hate to like put people in a box, but it's
Right.
actually a really good way for me to objectively speak to my child and say,
Mhm.
hey, like I'm seeing this, but I'm not seeing it come out on the field. What's going on? In
Yeah.
a very objective way. Like you said, I'm not blaming them, shaming them, judging them. Then they can give me feedback and go, Dad, I'm just really scared. You're right. And the domain,
Mhm.
normally I'm very powerful, but I'm scared in this reason. Okay. Well, then we can kind of shift that conversation. Now I have some information, and it's
Mhm.
not something like I'm beating them down. Like, why are you not showing up? You're a winner. You're an Elworth, whatever, your last name is. You're an Anderson. Like, you should be winning,
Mhm.
right? It's like, hey, there's a way to, I think, also have a lot of patience. I
Mhm.
can just imagine as well, if my wife maybe reacted a certain way, I could say, okay, wait a second. In the context of this domain, I can see why she's so frazzled, because that's not one of her strengths, one of my strengths. So there's a lot of compassion and empathy I can see going a long way within the family unit. I love that. I think that's great.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the assessment, if you do the full 34, there is two different versions. You could do the one that's just your top five. I definitely recommend, it's a little more expensive to do the top 34 to give you, not top 34, but all 34.
Brittany, but you do this, right? For families. You can do all 34 with them.
They do the assessment on their own just because it's easier that way.
Gotcha.
Because they have to put their email address in and all of that stuff. So, but yeah, when I work with clients, I want them to do the full 34
Gotcha.
because it's so much more powerful, because it gives you not only what your genius is and what you're good at, but also the weaknesses. Those at the bottom of the list are actually things you're not good at. And
Hmm.
also, there can be things in your top 10 that if you're overusing them, they can actually become a weakness. And so that's another powerful tool to kind of understand, well, what might be causing conflict, because I'm living in vision all of the time and my husband just wants to talk to me, and wants to relate. Or I'm so focused on tasks because I have high execution strengths, and I'm disregard or I'm not considering my relationships or avoiding my relationships. And so again, those strengths in overuse can actually become weaknesses as well.
Hmm. Yep.
So
So
that's
good.
why that's a helpful assessment to really think about what are some sources of conflict and how they might be showing up as an overuse of strength.
Yeah, that's really, really good. Love that.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about play. That's something you've also mentioned a lot about. I know that is one of my weaknesses because I'm very just I'm not as a kid. Yeah, I love play, but as I grew older, I found it useless. Right, and the
Mm-hmm.
times I have been playful in my life, man, it's always worked to my benefit. And arguments and just shifting conversations, being playful has been super powerful. But I know you use it for multiple reasons, not just what I just said. You can use it for learning. You can use it for so much more. Talk to me about the power of play and why it's essential for families to help rediscover, reconnect with who they are.
Yeah, well, I always say play is how you become who you are, and it's also how you re-become who you are. And so, yeah, it's challenging as parents. Like play can feel like a chore or something we don't want to do, because we have a million other things on our to-do list. But there's so much research out there on the power of play. And one of the things that there's a study by NASA that's of 1,600 Head Start children, ages 3 to 5, and they tested the creative. They were using their creativity assessment to kind of figure out how many kids ages 3 to 5 are creative geniuses. And in that age group, 98% of them tested positively. By the age of 10 and then 12, those numbers continued to, I think by age 10, it was 30%. And then by age 12 or 14, it was 12%. And then by adulthood, it was only 2%. And so I think often the reason that we lose our creative genius is because we've lost our ability to play. And I think that that's something that's especially relevant now, because our kids are all on screens and they're really not learning how to be imaginative and play. Um, and so play is also in that age from 10 to 14. That the research also shows that how they play in that time frame is how they show up in relationship as adults. So if kids are just stuck on screens from that 10 to 14 timeframe, which they often are, how is that going to impact them when they're in adulthood? And so that's why Renala focuses almost entirely through play to do a lot of this identity, strengths, needs, values, and play work. So we lead something called a Yes Retreat, and it's facilitated exclusively through play. It's for families to discover who they are and develop a vision using Legos. I'm just about to get my certification in Lego Serious Play. It's a toolkit framework for using Lego to help build identity and an understanding of yourself and each other. And So we're using Legos, we're using storytelling, we're using art, we're playing games, and so the play is not only intentional in terms of how its ability to engage the kids in the process of doing this work. It's strategic in that it really does shorten the process for transformation. Uh, there's research that shows that to learn something new using traditional methods, whether you're reading or watching a video, it takes 400 repetitions to integrate that. But if you're doing it through play, it only takes 10 to 20. And so that playful process shortens the amount of time and the amount of effort that's required to actually transform, create new habits, create new mindsets. And that's why play is so powerful.
Wow, that's awesome. And I think even as someone like myself who's very left brain,
Mm-hmm.
when you just explained that, I'm saying, wow, I'm looking at data. I'm looking at like how much bang for my buck can I get, and how much better can I make my kid or be even better at what he is. Well, you just said it. And do I want to waste 400 times talking to him, or can I get it in 10 to 20 if I shift how I deliver and model? And man, that's so good, man. Yeah, wow, that's a big one.
Yes, yeah. And that's why the retreat is done playfully, but then once families complete the retreat, they launch into something that our family created a few years ago called Yes Week. And so as a family, we're revisiting our vision. We're revisiting, who we are, because, we are changing. Our kids especially are changing. They're a year old, uh, maturing each and every year. And so this work is not one and done. So we do this process every year called Yes Week, where we're doing that work. We're having vision dinners. We're obviously doing this work for families in that retreat format, but that's how we're doing it as our own family is through this Yes Week process. But then families launch into Yes Week. And so that's their way of integrating everything that they just learned and brainstormed in the retreat, and then going out and saying yes to each other. So that's not just saying yes to your kids. It's a playful week. It doesn't have to be a week. It can be a day or a weekend or a few days, whatever is workable for a family. But they're taking what they learned in that retreat and then uh, committing to at least a day or two or more to saying yes to each other. So saying yes to play, whatever that looks like, trying some new things, getting creative with what they're doing. One of our annual kind of things we repeat every year is we built this fort around our couch and watch all the Harry Potter movies. So just getting creative with play and learning how to say yes to each other as a way to integrate that work that is done in the retreat into their lives, so that they can go back into the crazy chaos of life and already have had an on ramp of saying yes to that vision that they created together.
I love that. So yes
Mm-hmm.
week is like a sprint that they'll do to really
Mm-hmm.
integrate yes retreats. And then that's
Yeah.
something that you just do once a year, which is so
Mm-hmm.
good to just keep everything fresh, because we're changing and evolving all the time and things are
Mm-hmm.
changing. So that makes
Yeah.
a lot of sense. And I was thinking about play too, is that, there's a lot of neuroscience that shows like when there's an emotional impact to whatever you're doing, it
Mm-hmm.
creates more of a memory. And so I'm assuming with
Yeah.
play, there is more emotion being out that is being, exuded. And therefore there's probably something that has to do with that, which is why you memorize it slash are able to rewire faster. I'm sure there's
Mm-hmm.
something there. So that's really cool.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's tapping into that creative genius that 98% of us had at age 3 to 5, right? It's a
And
reawakening
by
that.
the way, 3 to 5, that's when you're in like a theta state. You're in more of a
Mm-hmm.
flow state, a
Yep.
manifestation state. So wow, that
Mm-hmm.
makes sense too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's all connected. Talk
Absolutely.
to talk to us about. I know you just briefly mentioned, but talk to us a little bit more about a yes retreat. This is something actually I'm interested in doing with my family at some point. And so, talk to us about why someone might want to do this. Spend a whole week with you and some of your presenters, and what they can expect to learn in that week long retreat.
Yeah, so it's not a week-long retreat,
Oh,
it's 2.5 days, but
sorry,
then
I'm saying for a
yeah,
whole week, just so you
yeah.
know. Yeah.
Just come on down. That's fine. I'll spend a week with you.
Yeah.
So yes, it is all done through play. We're looking at identity. They've already come to the retreat having done that strengths assessment and have done some of that strengths work. So we've already worked through some of that. I love the movie. We love the movie The Incredibles because it's not just each member of the family has their own unique superpower, but they come together and they change the world. So it's thinking about, okay, I'm showing up in my family with this unique blend of strengths. How are we going to combine them into the impact that we want to have for others? So we're kind of thinking through that family superpower, as I call it, and doing some of that work playfully, again through Legos. I don't want to give too much away because it's, part of the process is the magic of the unknown. And also, using things like movies. What are your favorite movies? And as a family, and thinking about what does that reveal about what you actually value. And so we're working through movies and stories. We're playing some games to, once they've developed that vision, playing some games to kind of make light of, what are the barriers? And as we think through the barriers, how can we kind of make a little bit lighter of them? And I, like I said, I won't reveal too much about what that looks like, but so we don't take ourselves so seriously, and we can show up authentically and vulnerably. And then one of the things that are my favorite parts of the retreat is families, once they've done all of the work, the identity, strengths, needs, values, play, developed a vision, we close out the 2-day, it's 2.5 days, with them developing their own family crest. And so they're working together. And then I pass that, what they did together, to a graphic designer, and he puts together a graphic image that they can print on t-shirts or print on a poster to put on their home. So it's a reminder of that transformational work that we did together. And it's present, it's visible and present in the everyday. And so they're looking at it and being reminded of what they committed to and who they are.
That is so cool. And, I was just, as you were speaking, I did some research on my own family. Man, I don't know, like 20 years ago when I was 18, my dad showed us our family book and the crest that we had. And I revisited that in the last couple of years. I went on a retreat with my son and really started revisiting my own family and thinking about the meaning of, like, wow, that I'm here today. Like, my lineage survived famines, depressions, wars, and I'm here today. And I could let that all go and slip away, or I could show up another day for my family. So your family crest is so important. But tying back to what you said earlier, Brittany, that family, those roots. Now that's my family crest that some guy invented years and years ago, hundreds of years before I was born. But what if I want to create a new family tree? What if I want to create a new beginning starting today and create new roots? Isn't that kind of cool? And you can do that with a symbol of the crest. I love that. I think that's so cool.
Yeah. It's really meaningful and really beautiful. It's more modern looking. And it comes back to that. What if your family tree became less about the past and more about the future? And so, and not discounting the past, because that is important. I mean, think about the stories that we bring with us of strength and how we own our family, owned power, owned our power and our genius. But then also, what do we want to leave behind? What is not, serving the story that we want to carry forward? Because there's both of those stories exist because we're human. But what can we carry forward, and how can we kind of create that artifact now that tells that future story that we want to live, that it creates a better future for our kids, so that hopefully they don't have to go through the tremendous challenges. They can actually be the solution to them.
Yeah. So good. So much more I want to talk to you about, but I know we're kind of running up on the hour. I know you have the yes retreats and the yes week. By the way, just on that note, I love it because it's 2.5 days, and that alone is a sprint. I could work with you one-on-one coaching online platform. I know you do coaching as well with families and couples, which is fantastic. But I could also kind of do a really quick sprint in just 2.5 days, and I can also get things running. So people have options. Talk about now has that actually launched, the Yes Retreats? I know that's a project you've been working on. If people want to go and check out your website or your social media, can they start signing up for the Yes Retreats? Is that available?
Yes, there is a page on my website. If you just go to renalacoaching.com, that's RENALA coaching.com. They can learn more about their Yes Retreat and fill out an interest form. The next one will actually be coming up in October, end of October. I think it's October 27th, I believe. I just selected dates this week, so I have to go back and make sure that those dates are correct, but I will have them on the website. And so they can fill out an interest form. The one in October will be hosted here in Orlando. It's on a resort on Disney World property. So you stay at the resort. We take lots of breaks because kids are kids. And we'll have, time to spend at the pool and meet other families as well. So that's the retreat that's for 3 to 5 families. So if you wanted to do that in community with other families, that's available. I also offered it as a private intensive as well, which can be done at any time. That I'm still kind of figuring that piece out because we just moved to Florida. We're in an Airbnb for a while. Normally I would host those in my home. But we'll, if that's something someone's interested in before our house is finished building in October, we're happy to make that work for them if the private intensive is a better solution. So, but also I have a strengths program, family strengths coaching that I offer that can be completed in as little as 4 weeks. And then an ongoing group coaching program for families as well. Once they've done some of this vision work, then comes the hard part of aligning their normal lives to the vision. So providing, a monthly family planning and calendaring session, just ongoing coaching in a group setting, so that they can, bring challenges and deepen in community as well.
Yeah, community is huge.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think people that go through the Yes Retreat, do they automatically go right into that group coaching, or is that something they can eventually sign up for if they want the continued support? I forget how you were telling me how it works.
Yeah, they automatically are enrolled in the first month for that. And then if they want to continue, I would certainly hope that they would want to. That's certainly an option, but that first month is included in the retreat.
That's really good. It helps solidify, especially everything that they just went through in that
Mm-hmm.
intensive. That's really nice. And what a great
Yeah.
idea. I like on that Disneyland property, you can also kind of turn it into a vacation. And
Mm-hmm.
by the way, it doesn't matter the age of your kids. Like I have a 10 and 6-year-old. I'm sure that would work out well, but is there a certain age group you like for people if families are considering doing this?
Yeah, I prefer school age kids, or actually is a requirement for school age, just because fully engage in this process, having some type of school support. And when I say school age, I mean kindergarten and above. So generally five and above is preferred. And if families have older kids, but also have babies or toddlers, they can still participate. And I'm happy if they come to Florida to help arrange some childcare for them as well if they want to participate, even though they're kids. I know it's hard because I have friends who have 12-year-olds and a baby right now, so it's like you don't want to leave that age behind because they're the 12-year-old's prime age to do this work. So yeah, bridging that gap. And then doing the work later on as their younger kids age up as well. So yeah, but the prime time, if you're only ever going to do this once, age 10 to 14, as I said, is absolutely the best time to do it. But school age and above is also a perfect time, and revisiting it year to year. And you really get the resources to kind of do this work on your own as well once you've done it once with me. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Last but not least, where can people connect with you if they want to learn more about Renala coaching? And I know you've dropped the website, drop it again, but also just on social media. Are you on LinkedIn? Are you on Instagram? Where's the best way we can follow you and stay in touch?
Yeah, I'm most active on LinkedIn. I post almost every day. You can find me there, Brittany Anderson, Renala Coaching. I'm also on Instagram. I can't say I'm particularly active like you are, Joel, on there. But yeah, at Brittany Anderson Coach or at Renala Coaching on Instagram. And then, of course, at renalacoaching.com. And again, that's RENALA coaching.com.
Amazing. Brittany Anderson from Renala Coaching. Thanks for being on the show. Appreciate you.
Thanks so much. Great to be here.